Welcome back to Jump Ball, your new daily dose of NBA news and opinions. I'm your host, Sam Conrad. Let's get straight into this episode. And in this episode, I want to talk about just how good this Miami Heat team can be. Because overall, there's a lot of mixed opinions. People saying that they're overhyped, that they're underrated, they're going to be really good, they're going to be really bad. Whatever your opinion may be, I'm here to give mine. I want to talk about just how good this team can be or just how bad this team can be. And overall, just put all of my thoughts and my opinions out there because I think that there's a lot of directions that this team could go as far as how well or how poorly they managed to play this season. But first, let's just go over a couple of offseason moves, and we'll just get the biggest one out of the way right here. They brought in Kyle Lowry on a 3-year, I think $90 million deal in a sign and trade. And in this sign and trade, they did have to give up Goran Dragic and Precious Achiuwa. I think they also had to give up a couple of picks, but regardless, even if I'm right or wrong about that, they did have to give up two guys that were relatively important in their rotation in Dragic and Achiuwa. Then they also did manage to bring in PJ Tucker. I do like both of these moves for the team because overall they're win now moves. And I think that this team needs to be going for a championship, pursuing a championship within the next 1 to 3 years, because overall, after some of the moves that they've recently made, they don't have a ton of youth on this roster, and their time to win is right now. At least that's what it looks like they're gearing up to do. Now, of course, also in this offseason, they did lose Andre Iguodala, but not only him, a good amount of other guys as well. Let's go over this. So they brought in Kyle Lowry, PJ Tucker, and Markieff Morris, but they did lose Goran Dragic, Kendrick Nunn, Andre Iguodala, Trevor Ariza, Precious Achiuwa, and Nemanja Bjelica. Bringing in three guys, losing six, and it's not like these are six scrubs either. These are six guys that could pretty much be in any team's rotation in the NBA. So they do at least hold a little bit of value here in the league. And that kind of brings up the biggest question mark, in my opinion, for this team, or at least the biggest hole that this team has to fill, which is depth. If you look at their starting five, it looks great. You got Lowry, Robinson, Butler, Tucker, and Adebayo as your starting five. That team is great defensively. It looks like they're going to be really good offensively as well. But then you move to the bench, and you got Tyler Herro, KZ Okpala, Markieff Morris, Dwayne Dedmon, and potentially Victor Oladipo, along with some other solid players, but no role players that are necessarily game-changing or anything like that, at least at the moment, right? This has been the Boston Celtics' biggest issue for the past, 4 or 5 years now, depth. They really lack depth, and we've kind of seen how that has killed them in the past. Granted, I do think that potentially the best coach in the league, not only in my opinion, but also according to NBA.com's staff's opinion, Eric Spoelstra, it is up to him to figure that out. I think that he'll be able to manage these rotations pretty well. I think he'll be able to I think he'll do a really good job scheming with this roster because overall, while it does lack depth, they are pretty good as far as versatility goes. So I think that there's a good amount of rotations that this team can run. They can put a lot of guys in different situations and potentially solve any of the issues that they do seem to face. But let's talk about the biggest factors that could make or break this team's offseason. So first, I want to talk about the Lowry and Butler overall fit. I think that this is going to be a fantastic move that'll work out for them. I think a lot of people agree with me there. Overall, as far as fit goes, this is an excellent move because according to this article, one of the biggest reasons why they got swept by the Milwaukee Bucks last year, Jimmy Butler never came into playoff form. If you watch those games, though, I wouldn't necessarily blame Jimmy Butler in this situation. He was constantly swarmed during the entirety of this postseason, having Giannis switched on him, PJ Tucker switched on him, Chris Middleton, Drew Holiday, all of these really good defensive pieces constantly switching onto him and giving him a lot of trouble offensively. And overall, he struggled, right? Players tend to struggle when really good defenders are guarding them. That happens. But the issue for them was the fact that when Jimmy Butler's off, this entire team was off, right? He was the engine to their offense. If he wasn't working well, then the rest of the team really couldn't function whatsoever. They relied on him entirely last season to bring them over the hump and help them win games last season. But bringing in Kyle Lowry brings some of that pressure off of Jimmy Butler's shoulders. Not only does this give them a guy that can actually run an offense kind of and create for other players, meaning Jimmy Butler can kind of just take on a primary scoring role more than anything, but it also means that if Jimmy Butler is starting to struggle during the duration of a postseason series or something like that, they have a guy like Kyle Lowry that they can give the ball to and say, hey, do your thing. Jimmy Butler's struggling right now. You take the ball, you run the offense, you make the decisions and help us get a win right here, right now. And I think that is crucial to this team's success next season. So overall, I think that was a good move. And if it works out really well, then this could especially help them during the postseason, which of course kind of adds on to their, which kind of brings their ceiling up just a little bit once that time rolls around. Now, the other biggest, or one of the other biggest reasons, or one of the other biggest factors, excuse me, for this team going into next season will be Victor Oladipo. I know that he recently, I think, re-signed on like a 1-year, $3.5 million deal this year, but that does not mean that he's a terrible player. He's just been extremely injury prone over the past couple of seasons. Maybe he hasn't fully recovered from his injuries or something along those lines. Nobody really knows. But in a couple of years, he went from an all NBA caliber player that was looking like one of the best up and coming stars in the entire league, all the way down to a guy almost signing a minimum contract this season. And according to this news, it looks like he could potentially be ahead of schedule in his recovery process from quad surgery, right? They're saying he could potentially come back around the All-Star break, or maybe in October, not October, around the All-Star break, or maybe even as early as Christmas or sometime in December. Now, if he can come back early and he does play well, which I think he'll be able to play relatively well, that's great for this team. It raises their ceiling even further because, I mean, A, it helps them a lot with their depth overall, but B, he could be a killer sixth man for this team. He works well both on and off ball, meaning he could potentially replace Duncan Robinson if they want. Maybe just they want Robinson to get a little bit of rest, but they still want some nice off-ball movement. They have Victor Oladipo now in that situation. Maybe they want Lowry or Butler to get a little bit of time on the bench. Well, they can bring in Victor Oladipo and he can become this secondary scorer for this entire team, right? I'm not saying he's going to be averaging 20 points a game next season, but I think he could potentially average like 12 to 13 points a game, maybe a little bit more off of the bench as a sixth man, provide you a little bit of good defense as well, and do a little bit of playmaking, which overall for him on the contract that he's on, and for the amount of depth that this team really has, I think that's going to be great for them. And of course, crucial to just how well that they can do. Because if none of that happens, if he maybe comes in late, or he is not fully recovered, or he's just not the same player whatsoever from what I'm actually saying he could be, then none of that really matters. That means that they don't really have a ton of depth. They don't have a guy that can come in and replace anybody from their 1 through their 3. Overall, it's just going to bring a little bit more stress to this team because they don't have that guy that they can rely on that they've hoped for. Factor number 3, in my opinion, is going to be Tyler Herro's development. I'm not expecting him to be anything crazy whatsoever, but if Victor Oladipo maybe doesn't work out, then I could see a situation where Tyler Herro comes in and is just a bucket getting 6-man off the bench. Maybe he can finally come in here and average like 18 a game, shooting well from 3, shooting well from the mid-range, doing a little bit of shot creation for himself, and just being that spark plug off the bench for this team. That would be excellent. Just because once again, then they won't have to worry as much about bringing in all of these guys off of the bench and hoping that they can provide a little bit of scoring. Because if we're being honest, take a look at this. Not a lot of scoring is going to be coming off the bench for this team. So you really, really hope that Tyler Herro can come in and just get a little bit more, maybe not necessarily be a little bit more efficient, but just score in a higher volume with still I can't talk. You want him to come in, increase his scoring load just a little bit, and still manage to maintain a pretty good efficiency, both from the field and from 3. And fourth, I guess this kind of goes with number 3. It's overall just the development of their young players. KZ Okpala. We heard a lot of really, really good things from him after he was drafted and during his rookie year, but he was really raw from the start, and this team didn't seem to really focus on his development much. We never heard much about him. He never really got any real playing time in the league. And overall, during the summer league, he obviously, as you can tell from some of these articles, he did not play very well. Now, maybe he comes in during the regular season and actually outperforms or exceeds expectations, but at the moment, it doesn't look like he's really going to do that. Overall, what we were hoping, or at least I was hoping he would be able to do, would be provide some solid defense off the bench and be a really good guy attacking the basket, a guy that's, slashing, cutting to the rim, finishing at the rim, and overall just kind of another offensive option to be moving a little bit off ball and keep the defense second guessing themselves. Overall, I guess, what are the expectations for this team? I think that they're a top 5 team in the Eastern Conference. Where they rank in those rankings, I could say anywhere between seed number 3 and seed number 5. At their worst, I think that they're just a 7th or an 8th seed. I think they're going to make the playoffs no matter what, unless injuries really strike. Overall, I think it's a solid offseason for the Miami Heat, but they still need some pieces to get them over the top. Whether that's a superstar landing with this team or bringing in some really good depth, I'm not sure. But they just don't, in my opinion, have all the right pieces to make things work going into next season. But they should be really good. I think there's a possibility that they maybe make a conference finals appearance or at the very least a second round playoff appearance. Anyway, that's another episode of Jump Ball for you guys. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you in the next episode tomorrow. Thank you.